I call to order the March 13th meeting of the Iowa City Board of Adjustment. May I have a roll call of members in attendance?
Baker.
Here.
Carlson.
Here.
Parker. Russo.
Here.
Russo.
Here.
Swigard.
Is Bryce here? Okay. I thought you said there were,
He said here.
I thought there were only three of us. Okay, good.
No, there are three of us in person.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, no, okay. So at this time, I would like to turn the election of officers over to Sue, and she can handle this.
Sure. I'll help you walk through this. First, we'll take nominations for the office of chairperson of the Board of Adjustment. If anybody wants to put a name forward, make a nomination.
I nominate Mr. Larry Baker. Baker. I almost said Barker.
Any other nominations? Okay, we'll close nominations. Vote for Larry Baker as chair of Board of Adjustment. All in favor, say aye.
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 Next, nominations for the office of vice chair of Board of Adjustment. Nominations?
I'd like to nominate Paula, unless
No, that's fine.
Schweigert?
Schweigert, yeah. Any other nominations? Okay. I'll close the nominations and vote for Paula Schweigert as vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bryce?
Yeah, that's aye. I couldn't find my mic button.
Okay. On that note, I will turn it over to the chair, Larry Baker.
Let me have your form that you read.
This thing?
No, the,
Oh, this thing?
yeah. Yeah, that long form.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Prior to the beginning of the meeting, we always read this statement. Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body created by the City of Iowa City according to state statutes. The board's purpose is to decide on applications for variances from the zoning ordinance, appeals of decisions of city officials, and applications for special exceptions requested under the zoning ordinance. Board of Adjustment is an independent voluntary board made up of Iowa City residents and is not part of the city administration. We are assisted in our work by the city attorney's office and by planning staff. Prior to this meeting, board members received the materials submitted by the applicants, the staff reports, reviewing the application, and any correspondence submitted by members of the public. Board members have not discussed the application or its merits with each other, staff, the applicant, or any other member of the public in advance of this meeting. All consideration and discussion by the board takes place in open meeting here tonight, where we will also have an opportunity to hear from the public. The board bases its decisions on facts and evidence allowed by city code presented in open meeting. Concise and truthful testimony helps us a great deal in our decision making. We ask that if you wish to speak, that you come to the podium, print your name and address on the sign-in sheet, and speak clearly into the microphone so your testimony can be heard by all present and by our minute taker, as all testimony becomes part of the public record. We ask that the proceedings be orderly and that when you are testifying, you address your remarks to the board. If this hearing becomes lengthy, we may ask that testimony be focused on new facts or on information not already presented. The order of proceedings for each application will be an oral report by staff summarizing the issues of the case and staff's recommendations, an opportunity for the applicant to speak, an opportunity for any other interested parties to speak for or against the application, and an opportunity for final statements and arguments by the applicant and staff. And the board will discuss the issues and evidence, state its findings, and vote on a motion. Motions are always made in the affirmative. And with that, I'd like to open the meeting with a discussion of special exception EXC 24-0001, application submitted by Adelaide Subtle and Thomas Heineman, requesting a commercial reuse exception to reduce the minimum on-site parking requirements in the Central Business Zone CB2 to accommodate the reuse of the vacant building at 215 North Lynn Street. And I apologize if I in any way mispronounced either of those names. First off, we'll have a report from the staff.
All right, Parker Walsh, Associate Planner. And as the chair mentioned, tonight I'll be going over the application EXC24-0001. This is an application for a commercial reuse exception to reduce the minimum on-site parking requirements to accommodate the reuse of a vacant building at 215 North Lynn Street. Shown here, we have the location map of the property, and here's the property located here, just off the corner of the alley and North Lynn Street. Next, we have the zoning map, and as you can see, much of the property along Northland Street is zoned CB2, with some properties bordering it zoned CB5. Going into the background, the property was built in 1880, and although this is not a locally or nationally recognized property, it does contribute to the historic character of the Northside Marketplace. The property was developed prior to the current zoning code and its current zoning designation of Central Business Service Zone. The principal building was constructed to fit the entirety of the lot size, leaving no room for additional development. And the last known approved uses of the property were office on the first floor and storage on the second floor. This office use would have required 5 parking spaces, and the property can be given credit for these 5 parking spaces according to the non-conforming development situations in the zoning code. The reuse of the building would require 5 spaces for the retail, which would be on the first floor, and 9 spaces for the eating establishment, which would be located on the second story. The applicant is seeking to reuse the vacant commercial building and reduce the minimum required on-site parking spaces from 14 to 0, which is requiring this commercial reuse exception. Shown here is a concept of the layout, and this is not formal. It has not been sent to review by staff in a building permit. But on this first floor here, the renovations would be generally to what is shown to accommodate the retail services. And then the second floor is this floor plan up above, which would be the eating establishment. So the lot size is about 21.5 feet by 70 feet, and the building size is about 19.5 by 70 feet, so it does take up the entirety of that lot size. And then each floor is about 1,365 square feet for a total of 2,730 square feet. So the parking requirements would be 1 space for every 300 square feet of retail, just looking at the first floor, and that would come out to 5 required parking spaces. And for the eating establishment, we'll look at the 1,365 square feet of the second floor, and that's 1 space for every 150 square feet, or 1/3 the occupant load of the seating area, whichever is less. And in this case, 9 spaces would be the least amount of parking required for this eating establishment. Next, I'll go over the specific and general approval criteria for this exception. Starting with the commercial reuse exception criteria. Criteria 1, the exception is necessary due to existing building or site constraints that make it difficult to meet that standard. As mentioned, this subject property was constructed in 1880 before our current zoning code standards. The retail use can meet the minimum parking requirements through the 5 credited spaces given to the site now. However, this eating establishment would not be able to meet the standard. And the building was constructed to fit the entirety of the lot size, leaving no development area remaining. And the renovation is proposed to convert an existing vacant first floor into retail, second floor into eating establishment. If the vacant space is to be reutilized, it will trigger current code compliance, which the site was not constructed to meet in 1880. Criteria 2, the exception will be compatible with or complementary to the adjacent development. 9 parking spaces would be required for the proposed eating establishment. If the on-site parking were to be reduced, the subject property and surrounding neighborhood development would still continue to be served by on-street parking, public transit, and several bike racks along North Lane and Market Street. And then nearby off-street public parking and bus stops are also located along North Lane, Dubuque, and Market. Criteria 3, this exception will not adversely affect views, noise, stormwater runoff, light and air, privacy of neighboring properties. The proposed project is primarily interior renovations, which will not alter the building mass or scale, affecting the existing view, stormwater, light, or air of the neighboring development. This site is currently fully built, and none of the proposed will impact the stormwater runoff. And the eating establishment will close by midnight. This will not be considered a drinking establishment, which could be open until 2 a.m. This exception is not contrary to the intent of the standard. The intent of the minimum parking requirements is to ensure that enough off-street parking is provided to accommodate most of the demand of the parking generated by the range of the uses that might locate at the site over time, particularly in areas where sufficient on-street parking would not be available. Staff finds that sufficient parking would be available through on-street parking, public transportation, off-street public parking, and bike racks located in the area. So looking at these images off to the right here, we can see the 3 nearby bus stops located within a block to 2 blocks of the property. We've got bike racks located along Lynch Street as well as Market Street. And then the off-street public parking I'm referring to is located in this area here, just east of the property near the Bluebird Diner. Criteria 5, this exception will be in the public interest. The exception would allow a vacant space to be renovated into an eating establishment that could serve not only the neighborhood, but the greater Iowa City area. And without the parking reduction, this space would have to remain vacant. The comprehensive plan neighborhood design principle, neighborhood commercial areas, also encourages off-street parking and pedestrian-oriented development that promotes walkability and fosters active neighborhood focal points. Now I'm going to move into the general standards and the specific approval criteria for them. Starting with criteria 1, the specific proposed exception will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, comfort, or general welfare. And the findings for this is the existing development will not be altered as all work is interior renovations. And without a parking reduction, the building can only be used if the proposed use would not exceed the 5 required parking spaces that are already given to the property. They're already given credit for those. So any future use that would want to accommodate this vacant space would be allowed by right as long as they don't exceed 5 parking spaces. In this case, we're looking at 14. So without this reduction, redevelopment of the site will be required to accommodate the required parking, and the intent of this request and the purpose of the commercial reuse exception is to maintain and reuse existing commercial spaces. The project is not proposing to impact access to any surrounding properties. Criteria 2, the specific proposed exception will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of the property in the immediate vicinity. The proposed renovations and parking reduction will not impact the ability of neighbors to utilize and enjoy their properties, nor will it negatively impact property values in the neighborhood. Additional traffic is likely, as this is a vacant building that will now be reused. However, the existing on-street parking, bus routes, bike racks, and public parking lot in the area will help to meet this parking demand and also mitigate any potential negative impacts. And the proposed renovations would reinvest in an underutilized and vacant commercial space to serve the community. Establishment of the specific proposed exception will not impede the normal or orderly development and improvement of the surrounding properties. The surrounding neighborhood is already fully developed, as is this property, and with a mix of commercial and residential uses. The proposed uses will occupy an existing structure that has been in the neighborhood since 1880 and will provide beneficial services that will not substantially impact any of the existing development in the area. As mentioned, the site and the neighborhood is fully built out, so they do already have fully developed access to utilities, roads, drainage, and necessary facilities. And there is access to this property through the pedestrian sidewalks along North Lynch Street. Criteria 5, adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress or egress design to minimize traffic congestion. The existing development does not propose any new ingress or egress as they're requesting to reduce parking, nor does any ingress or egress exist on this site as the building does take up the entirety of the lot size. And then no changes are proposed to the existing sidewalk. Except for the specific regulations and standards, the applicable to the exception being considered, the specific proposed exception in all regards meet the current zoning code. The subject property, as mentioned, is CB2 and was developed in 1880 prior to our current zoning code standards or the existence of its current zoning designation. However, since no structural alterations are proposed and all work is interior, the elements that do not currently meet the zoning code can continue as legal nonconformities, and that's according to our nonconforming situations in the code. Just a couple examples of some of the current legal nonconformities on the property. That would include doorways adjacent to the right-of-way that swing into the right-of-way, and also stairways that are located within the right-of-way. However, talking with Public Works, they're aware of this, and they would be willing to work with the applicant to give them a temporary use of right-of-way, as this is a legal non-conforming use. And then additionally, to encourage commercial activity at the street level, entrances to storefronts must be at grade or no more than 1 foot above grade. And this property is currently located at approximately 4 feet above grade with stairway entry. But staff will ensure that all new elements and any future changes will comply with relevant standards during building permit review. And then just some images here of the legal nonconformities I'm referring to is here's the existing stairway that is within the right-of-way, and then there's also an existing stairway within the alley. As mentioned, Public Works and city staff is aware of this and is okay with it as long as future development would get a temporary use of right-of-way permit. The proposed exception will be consistent with the comprehensive plan. The future land use map of the comp plan designates this area as mixed use, while the central district plan designates it as general commercial, office, and mixed use. The property is currently vacant, however, the proposed uses would fit into these zoning designations. The comprehensive plan also has a vision to include and preserve historic resources in established neighborhoods, which is carried out through supporting reinvestment in existing neighborhoods. And again, as mentioned, although this property is not locally or historically recognized, it was constructed in 1880 and does contribute to the historic character of the North Side Marketplace. Continuing the consistency findings, the Central Planning District includes a section on the North Side Marketplace, which is defined in the historic commercial neighborhood, which this property is located within those boundaries. And although this area is close to downtown, the plan notes that it maintains a distinct identity and scale. There's a strong desire to maintain the historic Main Street character, and many community members also indicated that the historic character of the North Side Marketplace is one of its greatest assets. A parking reduction in this case would allow the reuse of this building and help to achieve the vision outlined in the plan to maintain the historic character of this commercial area. The Central District Plan also emphasizes the goal to support the use of alternative modes of transportation, which if we were to reduce on-site parking, they would have alternative modes such as on-street parking, public transportation, bike-friendly transportation, and off-site public parking. Staff has received one piece of correspondence in support of this application. And staff recommends approval of EXC 24-0001, an application to reduce the required minimum on-site parking requirements from 14 spaces to 0 for the existing building located at 215 North Lynn Street. That concludes the presentation, and I now turn it over to the board.
Okay. Any questions for the staff?
We are not to make any comments or deal with the temporary extension of the right-of-way, the things that go into the right-of-way. That is not in our purview tonight. Is that correct?
That is not part of this review, and Public Works has acknowledged it and is okay with it as
Okay.
well.
Then I want an explanation of where are these 5 parking spaces? I'm very confused about this. This building says that it fills the whole lot, that they have 5, but they have 5 parking spaces right now.
Yeah, so when this building was built in 1880, we didn't have the parking requirements that we currently have. And so the only thing that staff can go off of is our non-conforming situation standards in our zoning code. And those standards would point to, if you have an approved use, which we did, the last known use was office for this building, but no parking spaces were ever physically provided on site, the site is still given credit for what would have been required for that use. And the existing office use has the same parking requirement as the retail, so 5 spaces would have been required for office or retail. And so those 5 spaces are not physical, they are considered ghost parking spaces, but the site can be given credit for it.
Okay. Okay, that was why I couldn't understand. You were talking about 5 parking spaces, and then you were talking about 9 more and 14, and you wanted to just go with eliminating all 14, and I wondered where the 5 parking spaces were.
Yeah, the 5 spaces were just for the past use that was approved by staff. And the 14 spaces, if this were to be reduced, the site would be given credit for 14 spaces moving forward, similar to these 5 spaces that they're already giving credit for.
So in other words, they have no access, because I'm not concerned about customers, there are enough other alternatives for customers to get there. I was concerned about parking for people who work there. But at this point, there are no parking spaces available there for anybody who works in that building.
That's correct. Anybody that had worked in that building up to the point before it was vacant, they did not have access to any dedicated spaces for this property.
Okay.
What do adjacent buildings do? Are they
Um,
grandfathered in somehow, or?
We do have an adjacent property just to the east. Let me see if I can. The building actually, sorry, just to the north has underground parking, but that was newly developed in recent years. And here we go. So this property I'm looking at here just to the north has been built within the last handful of years, and we have these parking standards, so they're all interior. And then we do have some lots for residential over here that have their own private lots, but this building does not have access to that. And I'm not entirely sure where the rest of this building's parking is located. It could be a similar situation where they've been here long enough where they were given credit for it, or maybe they've been reduced in the past or found other modes to eliminate or reduce that parking requirement. But I only know for sure the building to the north is within the building.
So on the corner, you have the Goose Town.
Yes, down at this bottom corner. Yep.
Somewhere down here, you have Bricks, right? So my concern is that everybody be treated equally. I mean, are they given, equal parking credits, et cetera?
I would have to look into all these properties, but the city would not enforce any additional parking requirements in any of these properties unless they were to come forward with new development similar to this situation. So at that time, staff would look into their parking and see if they've been accredited or provided in some way.
So some of them may be renting parking in the back because of a requirement or something?
I'm not entirely sure what these properties are currently doing with their parking.
It seems to me important information, however, just for everybody to be, what we don't want to do is enact something here and then have 2 more businesses yell foul. That's all. I mean, this is, of course, up to your research, but I'm just saying that this would be a consideration.
Yes, and I do know generally this area that we're looking at along Lynn Street has been there for quite a long time. I'd have to look specifically, but I would imagine that most of it's been in place since before our current zoning standards, and we would treat this situation similar to this, where they could continue to operate as is without requiring parking unless they wanted to make changes to their building. And this one was only triggered because this building is currently vacant. So if, say, one of these restaurants along here wanted to make some minor ulterior renovations and a building permit came in, we would not look at them at that time to see if they're requiring their parking. We're only looking at a total reuse of the building or demolition and new construction is when we would look at the parking requirements again.
Is that parking lot behind, to the west of this block, is that parking lot primarily residential, or does that serve some of these businesses as well?
I believe it is residential and all serves these buildings here.
I see. Okay.
We're done.
Bryce, you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay. I just had a quick follow-up on the two previous questions about this parking on the west side. Who controls that? Which of these buildings or businesses controls that now? Because if this is going to open up as a restaurant, who monitors the parking in that area?
It would likely have to be the property owner or the residents notifying that their spaces have been taken. We don't have any enforcement that would ensure that
Sure.
these spaces aren't being used by people that they should not be.
You know, I drove by there, but I do not recall, are they marked private parking in some way?
I am
Resident
not sure if
parking,
they've been marked privately. Just looking at this, I don't see any signage, but I am not entirely sure if there's any markings along that alley or not.
Okay, thank you. No other questions? I'd like to have the applicant, if you'd like to come address the board, please sign in.
Thank you.
Pronounce your name correctly so I can get it.
Thank you for everyone's time this evening, particularly when it's such a beautiful early spring evening. I'm Thomas Heineman. This is my wife, Adelaide. This is our kind of project that we've been thinking about for a very long time and waiting for just the right property to come up. We bought this property from Jesse Allen, but we've always been in love with North Lynn Street. I think it is, as you quoted in the comp report, that this is our favorite part of the city, and we spent a lot of time there. So for one of these buildings to come up and have the opportunity to turn it into something that we've always wanted to do is very exciting. As mentioned, my wife is from France, and we're trying to bring a little bit of French culture. So the retail store will focus on French home goods, and the upstairs will be a 1920s kind of French cafe theme. So that's kind of the big picture idea here. So. I know we're really focusing here on the parking aspect of it. I did want to clarify a few things. So in the back, that back parking area that you guys were questioning, there is signage that says this is private parking, cannot park here. So obviously if we had any customers park there, it's no different than the Pollyeyes parking lot, which is just to the top corner there that says this is for Pollyeyes parking only or private parking. So it's really no different than any other private lot. If someone chose to park there, they would be at risk of tow, and that's their prerogative. We can't really control that. In terms of the parking situation for Goosetown, correct me if I'm wrong, Parker, but Goosetown is actually CB5, which I think does not have, as a historical overlay, does not have a minimum parking requirement. So the Goosetown or former Goosetown building is CB5, so I think that they're exempt from minimum parking requirements. And then the remainder of the CB2, I think, bricks. So the building next to us is a retail space that is, I think, becoming vacant. The building with CB2, that's bricks, and then the building below that is the flower shop. So those all do not have parking, and assuming they would just have the ghost parking spaces allotted to them, as all those buildings, with the exception of the building just next to us, which Jesse also developed is a newer building. I'm not sure how they got around that, because that was built, I think, in 2012 or 2013, so that is a newer building. But no, we as mentioned, it is an older building. We do have to invest significant resources into rehabilitating the building somewhat on the interior and doing minimal exterior work, but we do want to restore the building actually to exactly the way that it looked in 1880. So we actually have a picture which they were able to pull. We're working with a historian. Even though it's not listed, we do want to build and rehabilitate the building exactly the way it would, adding the cornice back to the top, adding a third window, which it had at the top, and really trying to kind of liven it up a little bit, since we do think it adds unique character to this area and to Iowa City. But the parking question really comes down to, in my opinion, that parking is one aspect of this, but I think the cultural kind of energy that Iowa City has, as you guys all, I'm sure, are very familiar with, we closed this block during spring, summer, and fall as a ped mall. It's where we spend a ton of time. Families come there, people come there. And so if it was just parking, I don't think the city would make that decision to close theoretically 10 spaces or so on that street when they acknowledge and realize that I think the vivacity and the kind of this neighborhood, I think, is so much more than just the parking spaces. So that's all I have, but I'm certainly open to any questions that you guys have about the endeavor, any plans we might have, or any other questions.
Can I ask, so
Yeah.
how many anticipated, what would be, on a busy night, what would you anticipate the load be?
Around 30 people,
30 people, upstairs?
yes. That would be, I think, like I said, a Saturday and quite full, but.
I guess my major concern about parking is not your customers coming
Yeah.
in, but the people who work there. And what, and I thought, okay, well, maybe they live in the neighborhood and they can walk there. But my major concern
Yes.
is someone who is going to be there for 8 hours.
Yes.
And is there going to be a cost for them, or?
Absolutely, and we'd, I'm sure, work with them and try to figure that out, and we haven't, I guess, identified exactly. We don't anticipate having a huge staff, probably 3 to 4 maximum. So that would be, again, something we could work with the workers. We actually have a manager who we're already speaking with, and he lives not far, so lots of, I'm sure, biking and walking.
I don't live on the north side. On an average day, is parking pretty tight over there?
It can be tight. So the Pollyeyes lot on the top right there, they do have folks pay there during the day and then use it as their restaurant at night, because obviously I think they open at 5, so they're not using it during the day. There is street parking available. I know with Mercy not being too far away as well, they obviously have workers that sometimes use the street parking as well as some of the Mercy lots around. So it is an active commercial area, but most of again, the retail store, we're imagining much lower, probably 1 worker at a time, and maybe 5, probably customers at a time. That's going to be during the day, which would probably be open like 10 to 5 or something like that. The upstairs space would be open probably 4 to midnight as suggested. So this is probably going to be more evening parking use for the upstairs. And whenever we're downtown, if we're dining at the Webster or Bricks or whatever on any night, you can always park almost anywhere, even on that block, just on street parking, and the meter stops at 5 or 6. So most of the time that would be the usage there.
So I'm not sure if this is pertinent or not, but I'm just curious how you handle the grade differential in the front.
Well, I'm certainly not an expert, and Parker probably would jump in here in terms of working with the city, but obviously we're grandfathered in stairs, which are there currently. We're planning on, and this is not the purpose of the meeting, but the way that, because Jesse Allen, the prior owner owned both of the buildings, the actual exit in the back opens into the adjacent property, which needs to be changed. So we do have the stairs into the alley. We'd like to make the grade actually theoretically making it more handicap accessible, changing the stair to opening on the alley, and then having a ramp, because the building starts at the kind of the top left corner of this drawing at grade and then slopes away. We'd like to have a ramp there to access in the back, which would be a new access, but it would be more ADA compliant, and it would do away with the stairs, but would not take any additional kind of space from the alley. Goosetown does something very similar, as if you've been on the sidewalk there, they use the grade, because Goosetown also has a 3-foot, 4-foot frontage grade there. But that will, I'm sure, come up at later discussions.
Bryce?
No, I mean, I appreciate just going over the entrances, ADA compliance. So I know it's very tough with these old buildings.
Yeah, they keep us on our toes.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
You raised the issue of the renovations you were going to do to the exterior as well. I'm surprised this building is not already on the National Historic Registry. Are you planning to do that,
Yeah,
to take
so
advantage of the?
That's a great question. So I was under the impression that it was actually listed when we bought it. Not that that made a difference whether or not we wanted to buy it or not, because when we first pulled a historian, it's been inventoried multiple times, I think in the 40s and then in the 60s and then the 80s. And when the I guess let me step back. I didn't think it was listed, but I thought it was a contributing building to a historic district. But I thought the North Side Commercial District was a historic district. I guess that's been talked about for some time, but it was never actually finished. The North Side is a historic district. You see the signs. The North Side Commercial District is not an actual historic district. So this is considered a historical building given its time, and all of the inventories say that if the North Side Commercial District became a historic district, then it would be one of these important contributing buildings to this, which would allow us access to the state's historical tax credits and things like that for renovation. We debated on whether to list it or not, but we just decided that we actually do want to do more or less keep it exactly the way that it should be, the way that it was, and do it in a way that I think is respectful of its heritage. But in terms of just the complexity of listing it, and thought that it wasn't necessarily necessary for us, we may decide we want to list it later, but that wasn't the priority number one in terms of as we bought the property and started to think about it. In terms of
But you
listing
can initiate an individual property by yourself, right?
it. I believe so, yes.
Okay. And so there are advantages to that are available to you as soon as you would have it registered.
Correct.
Okay.
I think there are some advantages and obviously, some limitations in terms of having to have everything approved by the historical board. But we plan, as I said, to this is obviously this is a commercial endeavor. But if we wanted to just open a restaurant, this is not the most economic way of doing it, to rehabilitate an old building like this. So this is clearly just a passion project for us. And we hope it's successful. Obviously, we wouldn't be doing it if that wasn't the case. But at the same time, as I said, we're going to restore the cornice to the top. There was a third window in between the top two. We certainly want to keep the facade. It's don't quote me, but from the historians we spoke with, they think that this is the only commercial facade that remains at the first level. Most of the time, if you look at the former, I guess, where St. Birch is, a lot of downtown, the upper part has been preserved and the street level has been changed 10, 20 times probably over the years, whereas this still has the original Greek Revival. All of that is still exactly the way in the picture looks in 1880. So that frontage has never been changed, and we have no anticipation of changing that.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not,
I guess I have one more.
Oh.
So do you feel comfortable owning a building with two businesses in it that has no parking for either, and I don't care about the customers, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
for the employees.
Yes, we believe so. And again, the lot is the building, so we knew that there wasn't going to be any access for us for parking. Again, our exception, even if, say, for example, Goosetown, if it's CB5 and doesn't have a minimum parking requirement, I mean, they still have 20 employees or 15 employees. Webster has employees, Brooks has employees. So all of this kind of very active commercial area, there's none of these places, even if they're have parking requirements or not, if they're ghost parking spots, there's nowhere to park. Thank you.
Thank you. Technically, if there's anybody else who would like to support or oppose this, please come forward. And if not, last chance for questions from board members to staff or anybody else. If not, I'd go ahead and close the public hearing and entertain a motion to approve the project.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'd second it.
Moved and seconded to approve the application, to commit a exception to the minimum parking requirements. Any discussion?
I think that if you do the math and strictly follow the math, it'd be difficult to get any business over there. It's so tight. It's an old town and new surroundings, and I just think that it would be a shame to stop a really inventive project like this because of parking. I don't think that should be the chief consideration at all.
I agree. No, I'm very excited about this particular project. I think it'll be a welcome addition since I'm down there a lot.
I have loved this building for years and have always lived in trepidation that something would happen to it. So I'm really excited about that. My major concern is parking for employees, but I thought, I grew up where everybody had to have a car, and sometimes I still am stuck in that. And I think this may be one of those instances where there are probably people who would love to work there who may live within walking distance and may not have a car. And so this might provide them employment that they may not otherwise be able to have.
Bryce, any final comments?
I mean, I second all of the comments that you guys have made. I know parking is very difficult within the historic areas, and then obviously during COVID, this place was shut down and turned into a ped mall. So who's to say that that won't continue into the future and/or make accommodation to turn that permanent? So I don't think parking is the biggest demand for the use of this building.
Great.
I have one more comment. There are a number of bus stops close by, which means that people coming from outside can take the bus. At this point, the city is trying no-fee bus things, and I'm not sure what their schedule is, but they are attempting to increase ridership on the bus system. It is going to close at midnight. I don't know how late the buses run, so it wouldn't be like 2 a.m., everybody gets out of the bars trying to get home. So I think it could work without parking, and I think it would be a great addition to that neighborhood.
If there's no discussion, we need a findings of fact.
I believe, okay, let me see which one. I think it, except for the right-of-way thing, I think it meets all the findings of facts that Parker read. Every single one of them.
Okay.
Except for the right-of-way thing where, they are impinging upon on the alleyway and the grade, the grade in front and that. But other than that, I think it meets all the requirements.
And those are all legal nonconformities, so they could continue with or without this
Yeah.
renovation?
The only problem they had was the parking.
There's no historic overlay to that immediate district, is there?
No.
So, I mean, there are ways to possibly overcome the grade. If you can integrate a wheelchair lift somehow into a new structure. A ramp is in 4 feet, that's a pretty long ramp you're going to have to come up
Well,
with.
the nice thing, like I said, public
No,
comment.
no, go ahead.
So if we create a new door at the northwest corner of the building, that's actually at ground level. And then the building slopes away, so we wouldn't have a ramp in the front.
Okay, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
I see.
really,
Yeah, you can't.
first of all, the hearing's closed, and two, we wouldn't pick you up on the microphone for the record, so you'd have to talk in front of the podium here.
Yep, I think we're just looking for this, there's no changes from the staff report. It's on the back of your sheet where it says regarding item XC 24-001, I concur with the findings. I think that's what would be needed if that's how the board chooses to move forward.
Nancy, is that
Yeah,
all
I
right?
gotta find my little words. I don't have the back page.
Is this the,
Yeah.
what you're looking for there?
Just need the number. Do you have it up there? Okay. Okay. Regarding item EXC 24-0001, to reduce the required minimum on-street parking requirements from 14 to 0 for the existing building located at 215 North Lynn Street, Iowa City, Iowa. I concur with the findings set forth in the staff report of this date and conclude that the general and specific standards are satisfied. Unless amended or opposed by another board member, I recommend that the board adopt the findings in the staff report for the approval of this application.
You need a second on that?
Sure. Yes.
I second that.
Okay. All right, roll call?
Baker,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes?
Parker,
Yes.
Russo,
Yes,
Swigard.
Okay, the motion is approved. Motion is approved. Any person desiring to appeal this decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after the decision is filed with the city clerk's office. Thank you very much.
good luck.
Next item on the agenda is a consideration of minutes from December the 13th, 2023.
I don't have any corrections or additions to the minutes.
I move we approve those minutes as read, as written.
Second.
Good. Roll call? Or is this a voice vote, right?
Yeah.
All those in favor, say
Aye.
yes. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
All right. Any Board of Adjustment information? from
Our
staff
next
or-
meeting is scheduled for April 10th, and we have received an application for that day.
And we have what?
We have received an application, and we'll be meeting on that day.
Okay.
And that's April 10th.
Okay, great.
Could I ask one question? I would like a phone number for you, so if I need to get a hold of you, I can.
Yeah, absolutely. I can give it to you after this. Yep.
Or an email or whatever.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other business? If not, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.